So the first portion of the project is creating a responsive Twitter Bootstrap layout for your tutorial. Now you'll notice in week 10 that I have a video set up right here, the Twitter Bootstrap 101. Now, no, my voice didn't change. This is actually a video when I was looking into it that they created over there on Web Design Toots. It's a great video, and I figured why recreate the wheel, reinvent the wheel rather, if this video covers what we need to look at anyway. So what I want to do now is not talk about Twitter Bootstrap specifically, but just go into the requirements of what I laid out right underneath in the layout details. Now, first order of business is watch this video. It's like a 17-minute video, and it's going to give you an overview on Twitter Bootstrap. Now, essentially what it covers is stuff, the file structure, goes into kind of setting it up for yourself. And by the end of this video, you should just basically have a local version of Twitter Bootstrap on your computer with the layout with some dummy text. Now, ultimately, what he ends up covering is all covered here, and it says I provided a link to it right off my domain. It says the basic marketing site, the hero.html, and if you click on that link, there we go. Here it is. Now, same thing you'd find on. Actually, this is kind of. Let me get it right out of this frame. You could just take a peek. This is right off my domain, so it doesn't change. And this is what you're going to be working off of. And I also provided a zip file of it right next to it. So if you just want to download the zip file, it's going to download everything you need, all the JS files, the CSS, all that good stuff. So first order of business is getting that onto your desktop. Now you're going to have to manipulate it a little bit, and that's the second point right there is what should be on the top container. Now on the top container, I want you to have, you know, like kind of like a little marketing piece. It's like, what's this page about? So I added an H1 tag over here with a little, you know, underneath some more information, and then also I said, heck, why don't I put like some famous quote over here and an image? So you're going to have to promote your page. What's this tutorial about? Well, it's about HTML5, geolocation, and Canvas. So put it on there. Put something nice. And then, of course, I also said that if you look at the typography section of the documentation, it'll show you how this works. Now, you know, once you install Twitter Bootstrap and you actually read through the documentation, which you'll need to, you'll see that it's so easy to implement. It's just a matter of adding classes to elements to give them the look that you want. So play around, and like I said, it's really not more complicated than that. And if you see something, they give you code examples, and honestly, you should at this point just be able to look at the code example, derive how something should be formatted, and just copy and paste it right into your code. So that's all you really need to do to really, you know, sort of style up your Bootstrap implementation. And anyway, check out, at least for this top section over here, the details on typography. Now the next thing that I'm going to want you to do is add, I know by default what you get is 3 squares or tiles in there, containers, but I want you to split it up in 2 fluid containers. So you have one for geolocation and another one for canvas animation, just like so. And yeah, I want you to link the buttons in those to the actual working pages, and you could link the title to the actual location in your page, because this is all one page now, and then I'm just linking these up with anchor tags, and I do the same thing up top over here in the menu bar. So that should be pretty straightforward. Obviously, you're going to need to make yourself familiar with its grid system, but again, it's really not going to be any more complicated than creating div containers and then giving those div containers specific classes that tells you what you want. You know, because much like we covered skeleton in a previous one, this thing has a 12 grid system, right? It's broken up into 12. So if you want something to span all 12 of that grid, guess what? You use like a span 12. This class over here means it's going to span 8 of them. So if you were to use div class span 8, that means, you know, it's going to have what? Up to here. All these ones, it's going to span that much, and then, you know, it's going to leave that room over there. It's very easy. Yeah, it's surprisingly easy. So just kind of keep your eye on just the classes you got to put in. Actually, here you go. Here's your answer right here. You're going to just, if you create 2 div containers with a class of span 6, and that's it. They're going to now span half the content over there. So pretty simple, right? This big guy is a span 12, 2 span 6s, and so on. So that'll be easy. The next thing I ask you to do is to actually create 2 new div containers for your content and fill them up with dummy content and add a bunch of different elements to the HTML. Now, right here is an example of that. Here's one div container that spans all 12, so it's span 12, and this is like an H1 tag. I think I did, I added like a lead class to it because that kind of styles it a little bit differently with this extra spacing. You may not know what I'm talking about now, but when you read the Twitter documentation, you'll know it. Right here, this is code. Now, I didn't do anything. I didn't add Google Prettify or anything for it. I just used the built-in functionality that actually, I don't think I did anything more than just add the pre-encode, and Bootstrap styled it on its own. So this is sufficient for the more ambitious students. It'd be cooler if you did put Google Prettify on there, but it's not required for this. And the idea here is just add a bunch of different elements to it so you see how they interact and kind of get familiar with Bootstrap's default styles. And then let's see, you're going to need to, yes, edit the navigation menu up at the top. And I edited the navigation menu to basically have anchor tags. The first one I have code cascade over here always takes me to the top of the page. Geolocation tag takes me to this. I mean, this is an anchor tag, right, within the page. So it takes me to the geolocation section, and canvas animation takes me obviously to even lower in the page. So you're going to need to work that out with the navigation menu on your own. Oh, and since we're on the navigation menu, you're going to want to add these little glyphs over here, these glyph icons rather, next to them. Now, if you look at the icons that you get with Bootstrap, you'll see, again, you have all these icons, and if you ever want to add an icon next to something, if you just look down at what it is, it's just that you just add a class to it. Icon search means it's going to pull up, just look at what this icon search over here. Whichever, when you find icon search, it'll be listed here. So that means that anything, when you look at these icons, their names is the class you could add to an element to give it this icon, right? So if you wanted the old cell phone signal over here, that's just class icon signal. And if you look down at the documentation, just look at an example of it. Now here's a link, and you're going to have a list item because that's what the navigation menu is, but just see how it's a little, there is a little funkiness to adding it. You don't just add the class right to the actual anchor or the list item. You have to add an I element in there to add it in there. So just take a peek at the example and figure it out that way. Keep in mind, by the way, that there's both black and white icons. So if you're trying to add a black icon on a black background, you're not going to see it. So don't drive yourself crazy thinking, well, how come my code's not working when it's just black on black? And you're going to see that there are, here we go. If you want to just switch, by default they're black, but if you add the class icon-white, it's going to give you a white icon. And that's exactly what I've done here, because if I haven't, I wouldn't be able to see them, but they'd actually still be there. anyway, you'll get to play around with it a bit. And yeah, I guess the two final things I say here is add content to the footer and then kind of style, add some custom styles to the page. Now, it's important that when you add custom styles to the page, don't edit the classes within Twitter Bootstrap. What you need to do is actually create new classes to edit them. And that's an important point because you don't want to start having, you're going to want to reuse Twitter Bootstrap's core classes. So if you actually want to kind of like riff off of something they have and create something new, I would just copy the code, reuse it, and edit it. Meaning, the content, this over here, I actually use the code that's the header over here. It's like the leading, what do they call it? I forgot exactly what they call the very top container. Hero unit. So they use this. They created a custom class called Hero unit, and then for me, I put I copy and pasted that stuff, and I created Hero unit -db -mod, and I kind of made some edits to it, like just small edits, like line height and just some padding, that kind of stuff. Nothing major, but what I didn't want to do is actually edit that class specifically. So that's the way you want to go about it. Anyway, that's what's expected of you with regards to the implementation of the Twitter Bootstrap layout.